I love this, man! Why the f*** we doing this for? Right now, man! Well, Hurts is still trying to get the lead! I'm a big dog! I'm a big dog!
Which is Tom's favorite ring?
I know this one. I know it. The next one. Yeah.
Yes, hello, and welcome back to the final weekly Pick'em show of the On the Sideline podcast. I am joined here, as always, by the man who always says his favorite podcast is the next one, Kyle. Kyle, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, as always. Quick, before we get started, everyone in the chat, make sure to give Jackson here a round of applause. Not only
Yes.
that fantastic trailer, but we recorded on Sunday, and he's churned out like 18,000 videos pretty well in like 3 days. So make sure to give Jackson a round of applause and appreciate what he does. Jackson, how are you doing?
Yes, appreciate that. Yeah, it's the world's easiest job, so might as well put some effort into it. I appreciate it though. Yeah, so I'm doing great because my favorite team is in the Super Bowl, Kyle. Not sure if that's ever happened to you, but this is a very fun experience for me.
Yeah, it never happened to me. One day I hope that the Patriots can make it back and make the Super Bowl for once in my lifetime.
Yes, we should just talk about the Patriots for this entire podcast.
Honestly, I can, so.
Yeah. No, we will not be doing that. It's our final weekly Pick'em show. This one's still going. Kyle, you really want to make sure you predict the Super Bowl right because you have 69 points. So you want to maybe even purposely lose the game and pick the team that I picked just so you stay there.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it was a good run. I'm not expecting a big comeback on this one. I was right there after the wild card round. We were tied up. 2 bad weeks kind of sent me over the edge here. And, just looking forward to a great game, though, Sunday.
Yes. Well, it's not over yet because while it is a 25-point difference right now, if you predicted the Super Bowl MVP correctly, that puts 2.5 points onto my board. And then so that would make it the 22.5 point lead. So then you would just need the team that I pick to lose by 13 or more. That's not impossible.
Not impossible, but I need some things to go my way. So we'll see what happens here. Let's go ahead and get started.
Yes. All right. So the Chiefs and the Buccaneers. I'm trying to figure out how we should do this. Do you think that we should we give our picks at the top or should we wait a little bit and then give our picks?
Let's bury the lead a little bit here. Let's make the people wait around. So we'll go ahead and break the game down and talk about everything that we think. And at the end of our breakdown, before we get to the props, we'll make the picks.
All right. I like that idea. Well, again, there's a lot of ways we could start. I think maybe the most interesting to start off might be this Buccaneers pass rush against a Chiefs depleted offensive line. I think that's something a lot of people are talking about. Maybe unpopular opinion. I don't know if it's going to be as big of a mismatch as some people think it would, because while I do think that the Bucs pass rush is very good with Vita Vea coming back, they're just different. But at the same time, while the Chiefs do have a lot of injuries, they have depth too. And I feel like a lot of their backup guys have played well. But then I started thinking about it, and I think maybe one of the interesting things is Shaq Barrett has kind of, he's made a lot of money off of just destroying lesser tackles. Against the good tackles, he might not be elite, but against the bad tackles, he can pick up 4 sacks in a game. And maybe that could be a concern for Kansas City going in.
Yeah, so obviously, we've talked about Eric Fisher and Mitchell Schwartz are both going to be out for this game, and Kelechi Osemele at the guard spot too. So it'll be interesting to see how these two teams match up, because this is obviously the biggest part of the game, is that how can these two very high-end pass rushers for Tampa Bay in Jason Pierre-Paul and Shaq Barrett go up against those tackles, and also to also throw Ndamukong Suh in there as far as the pass rush goes. How can those three get after Mahomes? Because as we've talked about a lot all year, is that Mahomes, it's very hard to blitz against Mahomes. I know both of these teams like to blitz, something we'll talk about. But you have to have a lot of success rushing for against Mahomes. And I think these guys are equipped to do it because they have this good offensive line and pass rush, and the Chiefs are banged up. There are two things, though, I want to talk about. Is that the first one, the Chiefs still have Patrick Mahomes, who's the second best quarterback in the league against pressure. No quarterback likes pressure, but he's been able to avoid it and make good plays still. Now, the difference is, like, we saw that Bills game when the Bills ran, they didn't get a ton of pressure against the Chiefs, but when they did, the difference between Shaq Barrett and Jerry Hughes is huge, in my opinion. So can Mahomes avoid the pass rush like he did against the Bills and still make great plays? That'll be the big thing. And if they get past the offensive line, can those guys put Mahomes on the ground? Because he's tough to tackle.
He is tough. Eli Mullins says, how many great plays does Mahomes have getting out of the pocket? One thing I thought Tampa Bay did pretty well, though, is keeping him in the pocket and not letting him extend plays too much. And I think that's one of the good things about the way that this defensive line is built, is they don't have these like pure pass rusher guys. Both Pierre-Paul and Shaq Barrett are complete edge rushers. They can, do it. They can drop back into coverage if they have to. They can stop the run, and they can play contain if they have to, or they can rush the passer, and they're good at that as well.
Yeah, they can do a variety of different things. And one of the things I was actually reading about that was breaking it all down. One of the things that they've done really well since that Chiefs game in Week 12 and since the bye week was they've moved Pierre-Paul and Barrett around a lot more across the line of scrimmage. Barrett, up until this season, was very good rushing from the right side against left tackles. They've at the beginning of the year, they were moving him to the other side so Pierre-Paul can have that side. They've since started to switch it up more, and there's more rotation in that line. And I think that's going to be important because you don't want these guys to get exhausted, especially because the Chiefs can easily whip off 10 to 12 play drives and, just leave a defense gasping for air. I think one of the things that's going to have to be is they're going to have to rotate these guys in and out and make sure they're fresh and make sure they're on the field and making big plays.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. It could come down to some depth guys, which I do think Tampa Bay, their front seven is great, but they're great when those guys are the ones on the field. I'm not saying they don't have depth, but they really want to keep those guys on the field. So that's interesting. Here's an interesting question as well. Eli Mullen, does Kansas City coast like they did in the first game if they start off to a big lead? And I find this interesting because I was thinking about it. It doesn't seem like Kansas City has too much experiences of blowing leads. Every time they get up, they seemingly, and I know this is unrelated to what we're talking about, but I always feel like one of the unrelated, like, mental fortitude, like, tough things people can do is still keep the foot on the pedal even when they're up. And as the Eagles did that against Tom Brady in Super Bowl 52, I believe. Yeah, 52. That's something that could be interesting as well. They do have a reputation of coasting, and I don't think they'll coast, but I think that maybe that might be a new experience for them.
Yeah, I mean, that is something that we've talked about kind of all year with them, is that ability that they've kind of just, breezed through the game once they got up to 21, 28 points. I do think the thing that we did see, though, was that Buffalo game, that they're not going to kind of mess around anymore. That Buffalo game, they, I know they started down 9-0, but once they got up, it was pedal to the floor basically to the very end of the game. So I think I don't see them necessarily coasting, but I don't necessarily see them getting out to a big league like they did in Week 12.
Yeah, we have a super sticker from Matt. We appreciate that. Matthew says everyone thinks JPP and Shaq will bring pressure, but I think it could come from somewhere else. That's interesting. I do think Bowles is going to blitz to some degree, and this is still about the pass rush thing. I kind of said I want them to play a very boring style of defense. I want to play cover 2 man a lot with rushing 4 and see how it works. But I do feel like, they're not going to not blitz in this game.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of both of these teams to an extent. They're both top 10 in the NFL in blitz percentage. Now, Tampa Bay, I will say, when we were looking at it earlier in the year, it was them in Baltimore were 4 or 5% for blitz percentage, higher than just about the rest of the league. They were second at one point earlier in the season. I think that was just before their bye week. They've since dropped to 5th overall in the NFL for blitz percentage. So they started blitzing a lot less. And I think part of it is because they just had the pass rushers at the line of scrimmage that they don't have to as much. The Chiefs are also top 10. That's been Steve Spagnuolo's thing for, years. But when we talk about Steve Spagnuolo too, we saw, if you want to go way, way back when they played the Super Bowl in 2007, he didn't blitz when he didn't have to. He didn't want to blitz against Tom Brady, so they blitzed a lot less in that game. And they was, we're relying on Michael Strahan and those guys up front to make those plays. So I think both of these defensive coordinators are going to use their blitzes very timely because it is dangerous still to blitz against Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes. So I think they're going to use it a lot more timely in this one and more trying to catch the offense off guard.
Yeah, and it's interesting to talk about 07. I made a video where I went back and broke down that game, and there were moments when the pressure from the blitz was able to work. And I think that what you said, being smart about it, and I do think that Brady, 13 years older, is going to be a lot better at knowing exactly, he knows how to make some certain reads, and he knows how Spagnuolo operates, where maybe he didn't as much in 07. And I'm not sure how well it will work, but that did work in 07, but against 11 in 2011, when different defensive coordinator but similar system, he was a lot better at it then. And I do wonder, Brady's pretty good at making reads, so it's going to be tough.
Yeah, that's the thing. Brady is, both of these guys can read the game really well. So that's going to be a tough thing. And why it's so risky to blitz against these guys, and why I think we'll see more opportunistic blitzing rather than, these teams aren't afraid to blitz a lot of times because both of these teams like to create turnovers, and blitzing usually leads to more turnover opportunities. So it'll be interesting. And, like you said, one of the things with defense too for the Bucs is, along with moving Barrett, like I said, after that bye week, they made some changes. Along with moving Barrett and Pierre-Paul, the other thing they did is they ran a lot more cover 2 man, like you were saying, with those man guys pressing up front, the 2 deep safeties. And they started doing that a lot more after the bye week. And that's actually the defense that, bless you.
Thank you.
That's actually the
Sorry.
defense that, no, you're fine. That's the defense that Patrick Mahomes in this Chiefs team has the lowest completion percentage against.
Yeah, that's interesting. And if we could talk about let's stick with pass rush, but go to the other side. I'm not sure if I think Kansas City will have to blitz a decent amount in this, because I'm not entirely sure how much pressure they can get on Brady without, because listen, Frank Clark's he hasn't had his best season, although he has come alive in the playoffs. And Chris Jones is obviously Chris Jones, but this Buccaneers offensive line is really good. And I don't know if they can get consistent pressure on Brady. And it does feel like Tampa Bay has a clear advantage in the trenches on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, no, I do think they have an advantage, because that offensive line, like you said, is very good and a very high level. And, like you said, the Chiefs blitz a lot because their defensive line, they have 2 big names on the defensive line, but overall it's not very effective. They're 22nd overall, I think, in pass rush, with those front 4 guys. And a lot of that is because Chris Jones is, you take Pro Football Focus with a grain of salt, but he is the second best pass rusher from the interior spot, according to Pro Football Focus. And that's a big reason why they're not one of the worst pass rushers with 4 guys blitzing in the NFL or in the league. So they have to kind of throw bodies at the Buccaneers. It's just going to be, is that going to be a smart move to do it too many times against Brady? And is he going to be able to figure it out too quickly?
Yeah, exactly. And one thing too is, you can blitz and make it obvious you're blitzing too. Like, usually blitz is the element of surprise is the key thing. But if you're blitzing and now there's 5 offensive linemen blocking 5 defensive players, one of the advantages you could have is you could put Chris Jones on Aaron Stinney, which is the weak spot of Tampa Bay's offensive line. He's their backup guard, and try to get pressure through that. I thought Stinney has done a really good job. He's done a solid job up until the championship game, where he really struggled against Green Bay. Didn't really matter too much, but that's maybe the way you get pressure is, I've always heard that the way to beat Brady is through pressure up the middle, and they have a guy in 95, big Chris Jones, that can maybe get it done.
Yeah, I mean, he's obviously elite at that thing. And I think one of the things that the Bucs also have started doing, and it's become very noticeable in the playoffs, has been that they've started using more tight ends and running backs in blocking formations. They've started using, one of the things that we've talked about is Gronkowski is virtually a sixth offensive lineman out there. Cameron Brate's done a lot more in the passing game than him, and it's because he's been blocking so much. They've played a lot more Leonard Fournette than anybody else because he's the best blitz pickup. I know the one interception against the Packers, he did a bad job, but he's their best blitz pickup running back that they have in the locker room, and they've been using him a lot more on the field because that's been his biggest attribute, and he's also caught the ball very well. So I think that using guys like Fournette and Gronkowski is going to be big too.
Yeah, and one of the few times Gronkowski has missed a block this postseason was on the Hail Mary to Scotty Miller, but it didn't matter because Fournette saw it, picked it up, finished off the block, and gave Brady enough time to make that throw to Scotty Miller against Green Bay. So that is a key sort of thing. And Gronkowski, the numbers speak for themselves. He's had, I looked at just run blocking snaps, but in run blocking, he's had 18 snaps per game that he ran block in the regular season. He's up to 27 in the postseason. So clearly Gronkowski blocking has been a key attribute. And it's a bit reminiscent of when they won it all in Super Bowl 53, where that was a big part of their game, was Gronkowski being a big blocker.
Yeah, no, it was. And then he makes opportunistic catches when he needs to. So it's an interesting matchup because we you had the line posted here, 3.5 for Chiefs. Mahomes is obviously great at what he does, and that's the big thing towards this. But isn't it interesting? How many times have you watched a football game and said a team has a distinct advantage on both sides of the trenches and they're the underdogs?
I can't think of another example. I legitimately can't think of another example that, especially in a big game like this, that we feel like there's a distinct, like you said. I can't think of, maybe you can think of one. I can't think of one.
I really can't either. That's what I was trying to think too, because like you said, this outside of Chris Jones, this defensive line is not great for the Chiefs. And this has been an awesome offensive line for the Buccaneers. They've done everything really well. And then, with the injuries to the Chiefs offensive line, I'm giving the advantage obviously to Shaq Barrett, Jason Pierre-Paul, Vita Vea, and Ndamukong Suh.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I'm thinking of is you could maybe say last year when the Chiefs beat the 49ers, clearly San Francisco had a better defensive line, although I think that was nowhere near as dramatic because Kansas City still had a really good offensive line, and I think it was probably close to a push on the other side of the ball. So, yeah, like a distinct, like this is a clear advantage for Tampa Bay on both sides. That's tough.
Yeah. So, I mean, everyone's putting the pressure on Brady for this game. I really think the pressure's on Mahomes for this because he really, especially with that battered offensive line, he has to be able to avoid sacks and avoid big negative plays. Now, this is obviously something he's been elite at since he's entered the league. He's the best. He's one of the best quarterbacks I've ever seen at, like, not taking terrible sacks and just preventing bad plays on offense. But he's got to do it almost perfectly in this game. I don't think he can, they can't be taking too many sacks with this offensive line, and they can't be, he can't be running for his life.
Yeah. And the recipe is certainly there. I guess let's now talk about, do you think like over under, we'll say 7.5 rushes, not counting kneel downs for Kansas City. What do you have?
7.5 rushes. I mean, naturally I got to go over.
Right.
I mean,
I don't think if depending on what maybe if it's like plus 200 for the under, I'd go to under.
Yeah. I mean, that it's interesting because I think they're going to bail on it pretty quickly in this one, just because the Buccaneers' run defense is just absurdly good. So I think they're going to bail on it pretty quickly. But yeah, I mean, that's I still think that they're going to go over that, but it'll be close.
Yeah, I think they're not going to. Oh, one more thing I want to talk about with the pass rush. So I'm making a video on this, but believe it or not, this is not the first time that we've seen Shaq Barrett go up against. It'll probably be Mike Remmers. I would assume he gets the majority of his snaps, but it obviously won't be all. Mike Remmers and Shaq Barrett have actually gone up against each other in a Super Bowl before. If you remember Super Bowl 50, Mike Remmers was with the Panthers, and Shaq Barrett was the rotational player. He was the third guy behind DeMarcus Ware and behind Von Miller. And he only got about 20 snaps in that game. He got about 9 snaps against Remmers. But kind of a crazy sort of situation where Remmers starts off a bench player. Shaq Barrett at the time was a rotational guy. And now they have key roles in Super Bowl 55.
Yeah, no, they really will. So it's that's a funny tidbit. That's fun fact too. I also had that fantasy defense, the Denver Broncos defense
Uh-huh.
was on my undroppables list. They were that good.
Wow. Okay. Well, there you go. Fantasy guru Kyle. There you go. All right. So I guess we can talk about the running game for Tampa Bay now. We'll kind of go maybe back and forth like this. I do think the running game could end up mattering here because I think, again, if you can get Kansas City out of cover 2 man, which is what they like to play primarily, that could be a key thing. And, that's tough to stop the run with that kind of coverage. And if Tampa Bay can get the running game going, they're going to try. That they're going to run the ball on first down, whether it's working or not. And if they can get a running game going, that could be a key factor.
Yeah. I mean, because I think that Tampa can still be a great run defense even in cover 2 man, which is why, as you said, they probably should run it. I don't know if the Chiefs have the same thing because they don't have the linebackers that Tampa Bay does to make up for it, and they don't have Vita Vea, which also is kind of a big deal. So, those 2 factors make it like, okay, advantage Tampa. They can run the ball in this one. And one of the things, we talked about how nice it was to see Tampa kind of throwing the ball more, using more motion, doing different things on early downs to kind of change things up after that bye week. Immediately when the playoffs started, they went back to running the ball every first down, it seems like. And, you can criticize it all you want because I do think there's some lack of creativity to it. And, it does affect an offense at times. It made a heck of a difference, I felt like, in the Saints game because it started to wear down that Saints defense. And I think it could start to wear down this Chiefs defense if they're giving up 5 or 6 yards on some first down carries.
Yeah, I think so too. And I also think that, I do think one thing that doesn't get talked about enough is how it helps the offensive line to get these running plays. Just because you're not, if you're moving back play after play after play, you're going to get tired. You're going to start to get exhausted. And so sort of getting the mixture can then allow for Brady to have a bit more time. And I see a couple people asking, Zachary says, who will be the feature running back? And you think it's going to be Fournette?
I do think it still will be Fournette. I know Jones is more of their carry guy, but I just think from what I've gathered these last 3 weeks during the playoffs, they trust Fournette more. I think they trust him more, and that's why he's going to be on the field.
I understand that. I also think it's interesting because I do believe Ronald Jones is the better pure rusher. The problem is that's really all he's good at. He's good at one thing, but he's great at that one thing. And I also think that you look back and you see the game in week 12, Ronald Jones had a really good day in that one. And maybe they're going to there was a play where there was a small hole that Jones was able to get through and get about 30 yards. I don't know if Fournette gets through that hole, but I think the flip side is just, I don't think that I want to trust Ronald Jones to try and blitz protect against this team because that's just a recipe for disaster. He missed on one of the interceptions in week 12. It was because he missed the block. And so that's why I do agree. I think it'll be Fournette, but Jones will get his touches too.
Yeah, I'm sure. I think he'll get early down touches, but I just think because of what Fournette can do everywhere else, that he's just going to be on the field more. Like I said, they trust him a lot more, so he's going to get the majority of the carries for me, and that's kind of how I feel about Darrell Williams over Clyde Edwards-Helaire too, right?
I hadn't really thought too much about that side, to be too honest, but I don't know. It's very interesting. I think that it could depend on how the game goes too. Like if Tampa Bay is not blitzing like the first half, you might see some more CEH in there.
Yeah. I mean, it'll be interesting. I just feel like from what I've seen from Kansas City, they're pretty quick to bail on Clyde. If they feel like they're in a tight spot, it's just like, all right, Darrell's in. We know Darrell can make the right play. He's not obviously as much of a big game player as Clyde, and he's not going to have like a 150-yard rushing day like Clyde has a couple times this year. But he just seems like their steady presence.
Yeah. I think you're probably correct about this. And then we have a super chat. This is a good one too, from Matthew. We appreciate it. And will weather make a difference in how? So there is currently at Sunday, there's a 50% chance of rain. It looks like about Sunday night, there's about a 20% chance of rain. It seems likely it'll probably rain at some point during the 7-hour Super Bowl, as they tend to go on for forever. Will it make a difference in this game? I'll let you field that one.
Well, I didn't know the rain part.
I think it's a new development.
Yeah. So that'll be interesting to see how these two teams go about it. I don't think it'll make a huge difference. I just, Brady's played through every sort of weather you can possibly think of. I think they'll be fine either way, but it could add a little effect to it. A couple slips here and there that could be a big thing overall.
Yeah, I mean, I think that these things as a whole don't matter a ton, but I do think it favors Tampa Bay. I think that if this becomes more of a ground game, that obviously is a huge
definitely.
advantage for Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
So, if there's like this downpour and the Chiefs can't throw the ball, then that's a huge thing. That's would be devastating. So I think that that's definitely an advantage for Tampa Bay. But I also think that it is a wild card. It's less of a wild card for the Bucs. I mean, they were able to still put up 30 plus against the Packers in freezing cold temperatures. So I imagine against the rain, you could see something similar. And I would bet that the Chiefs still figure it out. But there is maybe a bit of a concern for Kansas City.
Yeah, I mean, if it's downpour like ugly, ugly weather affects speed more than anything else. So if it's going to affect any team, like you said, it's going to affect Kansas City a lot more.
Yeah, I agree. And who knows? Maybe with the Bucs drops they've had, maybe weather would be maybe the rain. A wetter football. That's what they need because it'll everyone else is dropping now too. So it's all the same.
Maybe. Yeah. Who knows?
Yes, that's my real. Just trying to find a way to turn it into an advantage for the Bucs.
Yeah. It'll be interesting. So we talked about the running games. Are we going to go to the passing games here now?
Sure. I guess we can talk about the passing games. Which side of the ball do you want to start off with?
Let's go with Tampa Bay. Let's start on Tampa Bay's offense against the Chiefs defense. I think this is an interesting matchup. So I was actually looking at it. I found it very interesting because the Chiefs, obviously won a bunch of football games. And so they're, naturally when you win a bunch of football games, like I was saying, you're typically ahead in a lot of games, which force the other team to throw. They were the second best defense in the NFL against passing or against wide receivers by total yards. They were 2,159 yards over 16 games. But they were the worst defending team against passing plays to running backs. They gave up the most yards to running backs through the air, and they were top 5 or bottom 5 in the league against tight ends through the air. So my question to you is, how is Tampa Bay, Brady's someone who's used his tight ends and running backs better than any quarterback in the history of football. How does he approach this game and how does he approach this defense?
First off, the disrespect to Jameis Winston.
Oh my God, get out of here.
But no, I mean, that's a real thing. And one of the things I've talked about is I think that this could be a big day for Cameron Brate. I think that we could absolutely see Brate doing that. And just schematically, it makes sense that that's the case because they, again, like I said, they like to have their two safeties and, play man, and their corners are good. They have really good corners. But, the way that you can kind of beat man coverage is sometimes by get Ronald Jones in open space, get a Leonard Fournette in open space, or get a tight end against one of these safeties that sort of excel in being just, not a traditional safety, but not necessarily the best at man-to-man coverage and having success that way. I think it's huge. I think that's what we're going to see a lot of. And, I don't know what the prop bets are on tight ends, but maybe bet on the over for great receiving yards because I wouldn't be shocked to see him have like 70, 80 yards.
Yeah. And, one of the guys I talked about for Super Bowl MVP, as a very, dark horse candidate, and he has over 500 yards against the Chiefs in his career in 6 games. His 100-yard performance this season receiving was against Kansas City in Week 12. Rob Gronkowski is going to make some big plays in this game. I'm telling you, if the Bucs win, Rob Gronkowski is going to make some big plays. Now, as we talked about earlier, I think he's going to be used a lot more for blocking this game because that's kind of how they deployed him in the playoffs. But I could see him making like 3 or 4 just monster catches at big times because the best part of Rob Gronkowski is, or when Rob Gronkowski was at his best, it's because he's an ultimate man buster. Well, there's other tight ends like Kelsey who succeed in the zone. He succeeds against the man because he's too fast for linebackers and too big for players in the secondary. Now, he can expose a couple matchups, I think, and I could see him having like a 4-catch, 75-yard day, honestly. Just having 4 monster catches at big times.
Yeah, well, I could definitely, I mean, again, I feel like schematically, I feel like Bright is probably the guy, but I do agree with what you're saying about like how many times have we seen Gronkowski come through with a big play, and we were making the comparisons to Super Bowl 53 and that playoff run with Gronkowski. Well, he had probably the biggest play in that game with his big catch to set up the touchdown. So yeah, I mean, absolutely, he's someone who even if he doesn't necessarily get a ton of receiving snaps, he can make the most of them.
Yeah, and also, that AFC Championship game, he torched the Chiefs in the fourth quarter in overtime too. So I think he can have a big game in this one. And, those stupid corner routes that haven't worked all season with him, maybe he brings one of those in for a touchdown. So I think that could work. And it'll be interesting to see that. And I'm also interested, I know, I brought up the statistic about the slot or the receivers. I'm interested to see how they approach the slot receivers in this game. I think the slot receivers can win a bunch of these matchups on the inside, and using guys like Brown, Tyler Johnson in the slot, I think can also pay dividends too.
Yeah, how excited do you think Brady is when he gets a scouting report of, hey, I think we're going to need you to throw the ball to halfbacks, tight ends, and slot receivers?
I mean, this is what he lives for, man. This is exactly, especially if, the Chiefs, like we said with their pass rush, if they need to start blitzing early because they're not getting enough pressure, then even more so, the running backs, tight ends, and slot receivers are going to have more space. So if they start blitzing, it just exposes a lot of weaknesses they have on this defense.
Well, or if they start blitzing now, usually the way they like the blitz is by having they'll have a corner blitz and then have a safety pick up that player. Well, now great, now you have Tyrann Mathieu, great, but do you want him covering Chris Godwin 1-on-1, Antonio Brown 1-on-1? I wouldn't if I'm a Chiefs fan.
Yeah, no, I mean that's the thing too. Is like we look at these corners who have done a great job all year, and I'm interested to see how they match up. But even as good as these corners have been this season, you still feel like Evans and Godwin have a huge matchup advantage, right?
Kind of, but it didn't really work out that way the first time they played. Kansas City did a good job against them the first time they played. So I don't know. I wouldn't call it to me, this actually feels like an advantage for Kansas City.
It can be. I do think the one spot where Evans has an advantage is the red zone. Passes inside the 10-yard line.
I mean, that's no matter what game he's playing, he's always going to be 6'5".
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, that's the advantage where if they get down there, it's going to Evans, and he's probably still going to catch it anyways.
Here's a question that I'm glad someone brought up. Julian, great question. Antonio Brown out of the backfield. So here's why this is a great question, Kyle. I'm not sure how religiously you watch my videos. I've talked about this a couple times on some of the videos. So week 12, they had Antonio Brown at the backfield. He was lined up as a receiver, comes in, gets in the halfback position, runs a route. Play got blown up. They didn't pick up a blitz and whatever. But when I went back and watched Super Bowl of 2011, the second time, again, not Steve Spagnuolo, but a similar defense, they had Aaron Hernandez in the backfield, which is, I'm assuming, not something he typically would do too often. And they actually converted a key 3rd down and 3. It was 3rd down and 3 when Antonio Brown did that. Part of me thinks that this was Tom Brady, because this was also the week that the Bucs said we're going to listen to Tom Brady more. And Tom Brady says, hey, this can work against this style of defense. Could you see over under 0.5 times wide receiver lines up in the backfield?
I mean, I could see over, always good news probably when Antonio Brown and Aaron Hernandez are in the same conversation.
Yes. Thought about that as well. Yeah.
So
amazingly, Antonio Brown, the golden child out of that grouping.
Yeah, no kidding. But yeah, I mean, I would probably go over. I think that they're going to do some different things to attack this defense. And, you leave it all out on the field. If they feel like they can have a matchup advantage with doing something like that, I think I could see whether it's Brown or even, throw a guy like Tyler Johnson back there. I think it could be an interesting matchup.
Yeah, I hope that they get some 3rd down and 3 to convert for 4 yards in a really insignificant way. And all the film guys will go crazy and everyone else is like, who cares?
Yeah, exactly. They'll do something like that.
Exactly. Thoughts on over under at 56? I like that question, but let's get to that at the end after we do our.
We will revisit that, Matthew.
Yes, we will revisit it. Okay, yeah. So, I mean, do you have any final thoughts on just the passing game? We'll get to quarterbacks in a second, also, but just in terms of the passing game as a whole.
I think we covered just about everything I had, right? I think so.
Mhm.
We can go
Okay.
to the Chiefs side because this is obviously the more interesting side.
Yeah, it is interesting. I feel like this is another one where how I guess the question is how is Kansas City going to get the way if Tampa Bay is playing cover 2 man, what's their best way to counteract that?
Well, so I guess we'll talk about cover 2 man for a second. The strength of this against the Chiefs is that the first part is 2 deep safeties eliminates basically the 2 deep safeties eliminates the guys like Byron Pringle, McCole Hardman, and Demarcus Robinson if he plays. Is he officially out because of COVID?
I believe I believe I read that it was close contact, so I don't think it's official.
Yeah. Okay. So, well, regardless, and the other thing too that it helps is that Travis Kelce can't run a lot of his zone busting plays because you're in man. So I think it's a tough thing. I think one of the things that they'll have to do, and this is something I actually liked about Buffalo, is while you're sitting these safeties deep, Hill is still going to have the underneath routes because he's such a good route runner and he gets such good release. You got to tackle. You got to be able to tackle Hill because that was the thing that the Bills did. They did a great job of keeping Hill within like 10 yards on his receptions, but he would turn the 5-yard catch into a 20-yard play because they couldn't tackle him. So I think it's going to be good that the Chiefs have Jamel Dean back because he can go. He was out week 12 in that game because he's their speed corner. So if he can go up against a Hardman or if they put him on Hill too because of speed, they just got to be able to wrap up and keep him from getting first downs on every catch.
Yeah, well, I guess that's the question though of, it's kind of I feel like the plan is usually you don't put your fast guy against Hill because he's still not faster than Hill. So, but it is interesting to get he could, help with those crossing routes. And I do feel like one of Hill's really underrated qualities is him in open space. I made a comparison. It's almost like when you see people trying to chase down like a dog that's not very well trained and the dog just running around and not wanting to get like tackled and everyone's running around trying to get it. It's just so difficult.
Yeah, I mean, he really is. He's he's impossible to catch. It's why he's so special is that speed and that elusiveness. So yeah, I mean, I think they can throw different guys at him, and to me, I don't think you're necessarily going to stop him, but I think the cover 2 man really contains him, or it can contain him if you tackle and wrap him up and bring him down. Because that's the tough part. Like I said, if he's getting 25-yard plays out of it, then you're in for a tough game. The interesting matchup to me is going to be Travis Kelce. Because while theoretically you look at a guy like Devin White and say his speed is terrific in that situation, he can try and match up with a guy like Kelce and limit his success. He also has proven that he's solid in coverage, but he's not an elite coverage linebacker. So is he going to be able to help out against Kelce in this one?
Yeah, well, White's a lot better when it's man coverage than when it's zone coverage. In zone coverage, he still has a lot of work to do, but man, he might be a little bit better. I do kind of feel like it might be, Levante David's really the coverage linebacker, and it might be up to him to sort of take Kelce and say, hey, White, you can, but it's, you can take the halfback, which would probably be easier for him because a lot of halfback routes are more relying on speed, which that might be the move there. But again, it's tough if, do you want to give away your play when Kelce goes out somewhere at the line, or you're going to have to switch? White's going to be on Kelce at some point too, and you're going to have to make that work as well.
Yep. And then at the obviously at the back with the 2 deep safeties, they just can't get beat deep. I think Antoine Winfield's terrific. We both really liked him this season. With that ankle injury, he can't get burnt by any of these guys because they're going to make him pay. I honestly feel like as we've talked about this game, another Brady game. We could talk about Super Bowl 36 when they played the Rams the first time and pulled off the huge upset. Wouldn't the best case scenario for the Bucs here just to make this game as ugly as possible? Like anytime, this is something that the Patriots have done as a staple, and they do it against Kelce too. Anytime he comes off the line, you're hitting him as hard as you can. Just hit Kelce as hard as you can, obviously within the limits because he can't commit illegal contact. But every time he comes off the line of scrimmage, just hit him. And I don't know, you probably can't do the same thing with Hill because he gets such good release off the line of scrimmage, but try and find ways to just get him a half second slower than he wants. And like I said, anytime Kelce moves, just hit him as hard as you can.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, that's kind of what Tampa Bay does. They have this
Yeah.
physical defense that hits people. The thing I showed in the trailer of the Devin White, like, hey, let's go. I believe it's like, let's go kick somebody's ass. It's like that's kind of their mindset of let's go out and let's apply some punishment. Let's not just make the tackle. Let's make you not want to have to get tackled again.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I honestly think that's how it's going to be because, these corners are also very physical too. All three of them with Davis and Murphy Bunting, especially, they're these physical corners who want to beat you up in the line of scrimmage. I do think that the best case scenario with those safeties deep is just to get this as a really ugly game where, as we talked about, Tampa Bay has a huge advantage on offense and defense in the trenches. It's using those guys in the trenches to your advantage by making them have to work harder to get open, making them have to work harder to get off the line of scrimmage. And I think that's the best case scenario for Tampa against this pass game.
Well, yeah, and that's I think that exactly where you kind of use that to your advantage, where you have this game plan of we'll give you 5-yard hitch routes all day long. We'll give you this smaller stuff. If you want maybe even these 10-yard plays, we're going to make you have to go 12 plays to get a touchdown. And if you have to run that many plays, you just trust that Shaq Barrett and Jason Pierre-Paul can get a sack on one of those plays and disrupt an entire drive because that can kill a drive.
Yep. Yeah, and since I talked about it as well with the Chiefs, I'll bring it up for the Buccaneers as well. They are, it looks like 12th here overall in wide receiver yards total for the season. They've given up the 12th most yards, but they are very good against running backs and tight ends. They have given up, or actually, sorry, look at this. Actually, they're 10th against running backs, but they're very good against tight ends. They're about 16th in the league, and they do a good job in that one. And I mean, that's honestly the key to the Chiefs' offense, though, is using guys like using Kelsey across the middle on those crossing routes. And can they win that matchup?
Yeah, it's almost hard to know how much you can take that into consideration, though, with a team like the Chiefs, just because there are tight ends and then there's Travis Kelsey in the receiving game.
Yeah, I mean, you essentially have to grade him as not really a tight end. He's more skilled than a lot of wide receivers in the league, so that's probably fair.
Yeah, and then, shoot, I had something else, and then I lost it. Terrible podcasting by me.
It's all good. So if it's what did Hill have in the first game? 269 yards.
Too many.
Total? So
yeah,
are you going over or under 250 yards for Tyreek Hill?
I think you've done this before. I will eat dog food if he has more receiving yards in the Super Bowl than he had in Week 12.
All right, you heard it here first, everyone. Mark it down.
Oh yeah, and that actually brings me to my point that I was going to bring up too, where it's like we can say all this stuff about how the Bucs can cover Hill and how they can try to limit this offense, but like I went back and watched a lot of the sort of the narrative is Hill was just like burning Carlton Davis play after play after play. You go back and watch it, there were some plays where it's like that's not bad coverage. That's just a perfect throw and, great catch by Tyreek Hill. And that's the thing too. It's like you can play the best coverage and still lose against the Chiefs.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, you can have a great defensive game plan and still give up 30 points to the Chiefs. And that's one of the things that we've talked about is when we've seen teams have good defensive game plans against them. We talked about that Raiders win earlier in the season. We've talked about how Belichick game plans against them. We've talked about how even the Colts have a pretty good game plan against them every now and then. These teams have good game plans against them, and it works for like a half because then they just start going and these big plays just start working still because they have just elite players across the defense.
Well, and that's the frustrating thing about playing the Chiefs too is, you can say you got to have the right game plan. You got to do this, you got to do that. But, if you beat them 9 out of 10 times, that still means the 10th time they're scoring a 50-yard touchdown. So it's a difficult team to play against.
Yeah. No, it really is. So it'll be interesting to see how that happens. Like I said, I think that they can have success, but I don't know if they're going to be able to do it for the whole game.
Yeah. All right. So before we get to the quarterbacks, let's talk special teams. Why not? We have some special teams. You picked both the kick returner and the punt returner in our MVP draft. I think that punt return could be interesting. Again, we've seen Tampa Bay have their struggles, but I think one of the real keys that they have is they have a good punter in Bradley Pinion. And he's someone who I think the logic will probably be like, let's not get burned with a deep touchdown return. And I also think that kind of them doing so horribly early on in the Saints game has kind of been a wake-up call. They all really realize how important it is to, cover the right gap.
Yeah, I know. They have done better since that, that opening to the Saints game where they were a disaster for back-to-back returns. So I know one had a penalty, but it still looked like it was going to be a big return. Got lucky with the call. So they have been better. I mean, the problem is that Pringle and McCole Hardman are still so explosive. Like you could have really good coverage and they still make a big play out of it. That's kind of why I picked them. That I think they have the propensity for a big play, but I don't imagine a big play happening in the special teams. It could, but I just don't see it.
Yeah, seems unlikely. There's always the chance, but I feel like in this game especially, seems unlikely. Any concern about Harrison Butker missing extra points?
Well, as long as he's outside 30 yards on his kick, I feel good. I mean, that could be a huge thing, though. He has some issues. He's had some issues with extra points this season. Could they, could those come to fruition in this game? Could they miss an extra point in that one? That could be a huge thing when these two teams, I think, are so close like they are.
Yeah, he obviously missed a short field goal and an extra point against Cleveland, but as a whole, his numbers are, very good. He's 92% field goal percentage this season. So it's again. Also, you have Ryan Suckup, who's a good kicker as well. It seems like we'll have the kind of special teams that I think we want in a big game, which is special teams that aren't going to screw things up for the rest of the game.
Yeah. No, I don't think it'll be a huge factor, but, it's always possible.
Yes. Also, bad news. That's the toilet just said, I'm from the future, Chiefs win. Well, that's disappointing for me.
Yeah. Sorry, man.
It's
right. Over.
Yes,
all right,
it is.
Podcast over. We know the result.
Yeah, I guess well, there you go. Figured out the answer to it. All right. I guess we'll talk about the quarterbacks now. Saving the best for last.
Who's the quarterbacks?
Quarterback, yeah. I looked at that. So Blaine Gabbert is the quarterback for Tampa Bay, but Drew Stanton might come in. Look out for that. Drew Stanton on the roster. And then you have Patrick Mahomes for the Chiefs.
Not Chad Henne. Oh, okay. I thought they were considering Henne for the start, but...
Right. Yeah, they went with just announced before this podcast, Mahomes. No, okay. Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes. Let me ask you this. If Brady is on the Chiefs, if there's a trade right before the Super Bowl, Brady gets traded for Mahomes 1-for-1 for one game, what would you put the line at?
What would I put the line at? I would put the line at probably Bucs minus. I'd probably do Bucs -3.
Yeah, I think that feels about right. I do think that clearly Kansas City seems to have an advantage, but it is worth mentioning, Tom Brady, he doesn't lose often. This is what he does. He wins football games.
Yeah, I mean, even when he has bad games, he still finds ways to win it. And, I just think it's been something that he's done his whole career. We've talked about this ad nauseum. I feel like he doesn't make mistakes. And when he does make mistakes, they're not monumental mistakes. We talked about those 3 picks in the last game. Just look at the comparison between the 2 turnovers the Packers had and the 3 picks he had. The 2 turnovers the Packers had were both in their own half of the field and led to touchdowns for Tampa Bay. The first interception was a bad throw, but it was to Amos and he got the ball at like the 20-yard line. And, it was fair to take a shot at that point. The second one was off a 3rd and long where he just heaved it up. And as you pointed out in the recap podcast that week, it was essentially like a 10-yard net difference between a punt and the interception. And then the 3rd interception was at the 5-yard line. It was a tip pass by Evans. It was a tough throw to bring in, and Alexander picked it off at like the 5-yard line. The guy doesn't make mistakes in his own zone. He doesn't make monumental mistakes that give teams huge opportunities and swing big games. And I just think he's going to limit opportunities and limit mistakes in this one.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, is we look at Mahomes. I do think about the Super Bowl last time when he threw I remember one interception to, I believe it was Fred Warner, and that was just like a "what are you doing" interception, and it kind of felt like a frustration interception. And Mahomes, if this game does get, if this is an ugly game, if this is a lot of physical play, he can't turn the ball over. He can't make those mistakes out of frustration. He is 25, which makes me feel a little bad that he's my age and he's a little bit richer than I am. I think that this
Just
is,
a little.
yeah, got a little bit more. This to me feels like the kind of thing where Mahomes has to, think about Brady. Brady was great when he was this age, when he was in his 20s. Brady was one of the smartest players in the league in his 20s. Brady is so much better now than he was then. Mahomes, I would imagine, is going to be a lot smarter in 10 years. Mahomes has to play like a 35-year-old veteran in this game.
Yeah, and he obviously has had moments where he's limited it, but he also trusts his arm and is going to make those try and make those big plays.
Mm-hmm.
I do think it'll be interesting to see how these two quarterbacks approach this game because, like I said, I think Brady's going to go into the zone that he can when he, like that Saints game where he's not going to blow you away, but he's not going to beat himself. He's not going to lose this game. If the other team wins this game, congrats to them. Brady's not going to lose this game. That's the big thing. And Mahomes kind of has to play the same way to a regard. You don't want him to lose his aggressiveness, which makes him great, but he also has to be smart at the same time, like you said.
Yeah, my question, though, is do we know Brady can't throw this game away? Because, yes, it's the Super Bowl. Brady's always great in the Super Bowl. Brady does have a game where he had a passer rating of 40 on the season. He has a game where he had a passer rating of 62 on the season. His record with Tampa Bay is not untarnished. And even against Green Bay, it was, 73.8. Again, the interception is kind of misleading. But there's not a non-zero chance that Brady doesn't turn the ball. I used a lot of double negatives. There's a chance Brady turns the ball over multiple times in this one as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with that. It'll be interesting to see that because, we talked about how these quarterbacks approach the blitzes. This was Brady's worst year against the blitz, for his career. And a lot of that was because it's the new system that he had little practice time to. So, when that playbook like New England's like the back of your hand, it's a lot easier to approach. And also he's 43, so that adds to it as well. This was his worst quarterback rating performance against the blitz for quite some time for him. So, and the other thing is that something that Spagnuolo likes to run is cover zero. He also had his worst year against cover zero. So how is he going to be able to approach that? But I still trust the 20 plus year vet to just say, okay, if I don't like something, I'm going to throw the ball into the ground. I'm going to throw it right into, if Gronkowski is in blocking and I don't like something, I'm just going to throw it right into his shoes when I need to, or I'm just going to fall to the ground.
Yeah, and part of me wonders how much of those statistics are, Brady stats and how much of them are just Buccaneer stats of the Patriots just pick up blitzes and things of that nature better.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that it is part of it. It's just it's interesting to see the back and forth and how that's progressed this season.
Mm-hmm. I like this question. Is there a punishment for Kyle when he loses? First off, I like how Eli is already convinced that Kyle's going to lose. Secondly, yeah, we need a punishment. I have an idea for a punishment if you lose.
Okay, what is it?
So how about, we've done it before where we've gone back and watched some of these all-time classic games and then done a podcast on it. What if we do one for the 07 Super Bowl if you lose this?
All right, that's fine.
Okay, the undefeated Giant. I think that would be a great content for sure.
Yeah, it'll be something. Can't wait.
And if it happens the other way, then you can pick a game for me. You're gonna have to really try and look hard though for a devastating Bucs loss. You can't lose in devastating ways if you don't make the playoffs very often.
Yeah, that's true. I might have to go Rays for that one. We'll see.
Yeah, we can see about that. Yeah. So okay, I feel like we've covered most of the game. Are you ready for the picks?
Yes. So obviously you had the floor because you're making your prediction for the points. Mm-hmm. We'll talk about that, and then I'll give my prediction for the game, which has no impact on our point system.
Right. So I just feel like my mindset is, who do I feel has the best chance? It's a little bit different because I'm not necessarily picking who I just in a vacuum think is going to win. It's a bit of who do I think can cover a 13.5 point spread or potentially a 19.5 point spread? Who do I think has the lowest chance of getting blown out? I kind of feel like the Bucs have the lowest chance of getting blown out. So I'm going to stick with my home team for the fourth week in a row. I will pick the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to win Super Bowl 55. And I think I'm going to just do it outright too. I think the Bucs, I said Chiefs in a video early on, but I think I've changed my mind. I'm going to go Tampa Bay.
That's fair. I think it's interesting to see the matchups. I think it's hard to bet against either of these quarterbacks. You know, we've talked about Brady just finds ways to win these games. You know, people like to call it lucky. People like to call it, you know, part of the system. People like to call it a whole lot of variety of different things. Brady just ends up winning these games more than he loses them. And I think that's a big thing. And on the other side, you have the most talented quarterback with the most creative head coach offensive coordinator combo in the league. You have the fastest and probably best weapon in offensive football in Tyreek Hill. And you have the ultimate zone busting scheme. If Tyreek Hill starts going nuts and you have to sit in zone to eliminate him, you have the ultimate zone busting player in Travis Kelce. So it's hard to pick against either of these teams. At the end of the day, I think the injuries are too much. I'm going with Tampa Bay as well. I think they find a way to win this one 21-17.
21-17. Wow. So you're going with a low scoring game.
Yeah, I know. So the Chiefs have not scored 20 points once all year, and then they had 22 against the Broncos. It's happening in this one. It goes against every fabric of my being to think that 3 offensive linemen are going to be gone and you're just going to be fine. Especially against, it's one thing to do it against Jerry Hughes and company for the Bills. No disrespect to Jerry Hughes. I think he's a fun football player, but he's not Shaq Barrett.
Some disrespect to Jerry Hughes.
I mean, I like him, but he's not Shaq Barrett, Jason Pierre-Paul, and Ndamukong Suh. And even, when we talked about opportunistic blitzing, he's not Devin White either, who's an awesome blitzer out of the linebacker spot. He's not Antoine Winfield, who's an awesome blitzer out of the safety spot. I think there's too many weapons on this defense for Tampa Bay, and with a battered offensive line, I think it's going to be a tough task for them. I think Tampa Bay gets this done, 21-17 with a Brady 2-minute drill at the end of the game to get a touchdown.
Yes. Also, you got called out in the chat. Chiefs 17 against the Falcons. Way to go, Kyle. You blew it. You blew it.
I said they scored under 20 once all year.
Oh, I thought you said not once all year.
Oh, I said once all year. If I said not once, I'm sorry. I meant once all year. I misspoke. They scored under 20 points once all year. They did win that game. But, yeah, so I'm going 21-17 Bucs.
Yeah, interesting. I could see something similar. I kind of feel like it'll be a bit more high scoring. But yeah, and part of why I'm picking Tampa Bay is it's just like, how am I going to pick against? Like we said, like how am I going to pick against a team that has a significant disadvantage in the trenches on both sides of the ball? Like that still matters a lot in football, and it's not something people pay much attention to, but I still think it matters. And also, I know the Chiefs have a much better record. They've won 3 more games in the regular season and could have been 4 had they not rested their starters week 16. But I think one thing that I found interesting is I did this video that about just looking at some of these things like, better record and seeing how much that actually matters. Here's a weird stat. The last 9 times 2 teams in the Super Bowl had different records, because sometimes they had the same record. The team with a worse record won 8 of them.
Really?
Yeah, 1-8 is the team with the better record. And I was trying to think, is there a reason for that? Is it just random? The only reason I could come up with is like maybe, a team isn't battle tested, which I think could be true for Kansas City. They're not as battle tested. Tampa Bay, you think about all the adversity they've had to go through this season. Kansas City kind of have just coasted this whole way through. The only exception was really against Cleveland.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that it'll be an interesting matchup, but I mean, I think that's the thing though, is that one matchup was against Cleveland that they struggled, and they had a healthier offensive line then, and still I thought Cleveland was the only defensive line I felt like they faced that kind of matches this Tampa Bay defensive line.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. And I mean, we saw, Atlanta was able to have some pressure with them. So it's happened. It's happened. It should be interesting. Any final thoughts on the game, or do you want to get to the Super Bowl prop bets?
I think we just about covered everything. I mean, we went, after your awesome intro, we've gone 58 minutes on the Super Bowl. So yeah, there's no way we left anything on the table here. So. I'm
sure there's still something. Why didn't you talk about the fullback play? Something.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we can get into Sherman if we want to.
Yeah, I think we're okay. One more thing I should say. I also think bet the under. I know you're saying it's going to be a low scoring game. That was a question, super chat earlier. I think bet the under would be my advice for anyone who is, legally old enough to gamble and also knows how to gamble responsibly.
Yeah, I mean, that's just something I always tend to do for big games. I don't know. I haven't looked up the statistics on NFL games for over-unders, but I will tell you, like, NBA, NBA game sevens typically hit at a historically high under
Yeah.
because just the pressure of the game is too much and, they don't score as much. I'm sure it's very similar for the NFL. I'm trying to think of high scoring like Super Bowls, and I can think of the Eagles Patriots a few years ago, and I can think of like that Cardinals one that's over a decade ago. I can't think of a ton of high scoring shootout Super Bowls.
Yeah, that's a good point. Also, I remembered I pulled up one clip from an old podcast. I found this nugget. I figured I'll play this. This was right after the Bucs lost to the Saints for the second time. Here's what I had to say. I'm very frustrated about this loss. I still think we're a playoff team, but let's just be honest. This isn't a Super Bowl team. This isn't a Super Bowl team. You can't lose to the Saints 38-3, get blown out by them in another week, nearly lose to the Chargers, lose to the Bears, nearly lose to the Giants, and act like this is a Super Bowl team. They're just not on that level, and they're just not. Yeah, very happy to be wrong, Kyle.
Yeah, you're the anti-Tony Romo. Tony Romo predicted that they'll be back for Super Bowl
right
after the Week 12 game. So,
In fairness to me, though, I have picked Tampa Bay every single game so far.
That's true. You picked them throughout the playoffs, and I think I faded them up until this game. I faded them every week until now. Actually, no, I picked them against Washington. So
right, I was about to say, yeah, I think you had to move well. All right, let's get to the prop bets, and then we'll end the show. So I have a few that I thought were fun. I'm going to bet a little bit of money on the prop bets, Kyle. First off, coin toss, tails. I mean, that's easy.
Tails never fails.
Yeah, tails never. And it really is true. You don't want to say heads, have it land tails, and then have someone say tails never fails. It's demoralizing.
Yeah, at least when you say, if it's tails, you can say it's a double-sided coin.
Right, exactly. National anthem, over under 2 minutes and 3 seconds. I think the under. I think that maybe I'm not sure exactly how it's going to work, but I think maybe with the COVID, less crowd, maybe you're just trying to get it over with a little bit. It could be rainy. I'm not sure that could affect. I'm not sure if this is going to be a national anthem actually at the stadium or if it's one of those things piped in. But if it's piped in, maybe that could also go. I think under is a good bet here.
This is one of my biggest pet peeves about Super Bowl props. I never bet this anymore because it's so stupid, because there's so many arguments about when did the last note end or when did it start, how they do it. And then like when they have the fighter jets going, you can barely hear it. So you don't know when it actually ends. I don't bet Super Bowl national anthem because it's too ridiculous.
But isn't that part of the fun? You want to yell at oh, I want it.
Yeah, that's fair. My interesting one here is you got to go Gatorade shower, right?
Yeah. What color are you going with here?
So the last one I saw had orange as a heavy favorite because the Chiefs had orange last year, which is an interesting case, but I'm still leaning red. And red just seems like way too easy. It's way too obvious, but that's exactly why it's going to be red. Both of these teams have red in their color schemes. I'm going red Gatorade here.
But couldn't that be maybe they're not going to put a red thing because they want it to stand out against the red?
It's possible, but I don't know. I got a funny feeling about this one. I'm definitely going all in on the red.
Yeah, I have yellow /green /lime. It's plus 400, so I like those odds. And I feel like there's a better than 1 in 4 chance that one hits.
Yeah, just nobody bet purple because that's easily the worst Gatorade flavor. Don't even waste your time. If they had purple Gatorade on the sideline, everyone would be dehydrated. So don't waste your time with purple.
No way that team would win because no one will want to drink the Gatorade and they'd all be dehydrated.
Yeah, exactly. Purple Gatorade is awful.
Yeah. I have will the weekend change outfits during halftime? I have no because it's plus 170. And I think that, I feel like there's a chance. No outfit changes here, especially with COVID. It'll be hard to really get these, I'm not sure how many extra people you want to have there. I think no is a solid choice here.
I think that's a fair bet. I tried I tried hard to research this. I looked up if his tours he changes outfits. Couldn't find a result for it, but I think that's a fair bet, especially given COVID.
Yes. Do you have will the weekend test positive for COVID before the game?
No,
I,
I don't think he will.
I put on yes because how can you not bet for someone to get COVID?
Yeah, yeah, that's the one thing we all want, right?
First appear on stage with the weekend, I have Drake plus 600. He's another. They're from both Canadian. Maybe you could have the Canadian connection.
I like that pick. I mean, have they announced that? Is there going to be any guests at this thing?
I have no idea, but I'm still betting money on it.
All right, awesome. That's always a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. I was trying to look at a couple props as well, as far as the game props, as far as the players. Here's one I really like. Rob Gronkowski minus 115 over 30.5 yards. I've hit this Rob Gronkowski point probably 8 times this week. I would pound the over on over 30.5 yards. I think he's going to have like 3 or 4 big catches and hit the over 30.
Yeah, that's a good one. I like that one. I also have first play of the game. It's minus 130 for a rushing play. I'm doing that one because Tampa Bay is going to run if they get the first play of the game, and there's a chance Kansas City doesn't.
Yeah, no, I agree. So you have a 50-50 chance there.
Yeah, I think a little bit better, though, because I think there's a chance that Kansas City still runs the ball to first play.
Yeah, no, that's fair. It'll be interesting. I like running on the first play. Do they have a first score prop?
They do. I didn't check and see what the numbers are.
Oh, well, we can move on from that one. But yeah, I mean, also with Gronkowski, one of the things you talked about too, there's great value with this one, I feel like. Cameron Brate, you can get minus 115 for over 26.5 yards. We hit our break point and on the tight ends too with Kansas City. I would pound both of the overs for the tight ends. I think they're both going. I think Gronkowski gets 31 reception yards, and I think Brate gets over 27 receiving yards.
Yeah, I have another good one. Neither team scores 10 points. Okay, this probably won't happen, but it's plus 10,000. You put $10 on it, win $1,000 if it happens.
I'm going to quote the great Kevin Malone here. For any Office fans, anytime you can get plus 10,000 odds, you take it.
Exactly. Yes. All right. I have winning coach drenched before the final whistle. I'm going to go no. I think there's a good chance that this is I think there's a good chance that this one could come down to the final play. I also think that Tampa Bay, not a lot of experience there. They might not, even if they win it early, they might end up, taking a minute to actually drench it and, the superstition and everything. So it's plus 120 for no.
Yeah, so this is an interesting one for me too, because actually what I was thinking about with the Gatorade shower, we've seen Bruce Arians all year with that contraption on the front of his chest.
Mm-hmm.
Is there potential he's not Gatorade showered? Because he could get electrocuted.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. There is going to have to be like a, hey, BA, like take that thing. And what if he'll just be like, no, like F you guys, I don't want to do this.
Yeah, I'm not going to willingly get myself electrocuted. So
yeah,
that is an interesting variable to this as well.
Yes, that's good. Total Gatorade buckets poured. One is minus 400, but I still feel like it's hard to imagine multiple get poured. And I believe it has to be on the head coach.
Yeah, I would just go with one.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Will there be a safety? You always have to bet yes for will there be a safety.
You might as well, because you don't want to be the schmuck who bet no, and then there is a safety.
Yeah, and plus 700 odds. And then will there be a successful 2-point attempt? It's plus 200. I also think yes. I think one of these teams will end up going for 2 here.
I mean, these two head coaches are pretty aggressive, so I see that happening.
Yeah. All right. So there you go. Now you guys can bet on all of those and make $1 billion.
Yeah, we're obviously right about everything. So.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Also, should mention, don't take our word for anything we just said, because I historically always lose money on these types of dumb Super Bowl prop bets.
I mean, they're built for people to lose money. So.
Yeah. It's simply for fun. That's why you do it. Don't bet with the intention of actually making money on them.
Yeah, and don't obviously, gamble responsibly, folks.
Right. All right. So now we've said that, so we don't feel bad when
we're not liable.
Some 18-year-olds like, I lost all my money. Screw you, Kyle.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, someone will find a way to blame me,
Yeah, well, fair. All right. So that's our show. Kyle, we've gotten through it. The next time we'll be podcasting, we will have a Super Bowl champion.
Yeah, final football game of the season. Sad to see, but looking forward to it. This is an exciting matchup, seeing these two go head to head.
Yes, and what I said, don't take what we say seriously. Eli said, especially the no team scores 10. Okay, come on, Eli. 10,000 to 1, 10 plus 10,000 odds.
I hope this game's like 6-3, like that Alabama LSU game from almost a decade ago. So sweet, let's do it. 6-3, Tampa Bay Bucs.
Yes. Also, apparently, Kyle just DM'd Bernardo saying he'll refund everybody for whatever money they bet. So there you go. What a nice gesture by Kyle.
No, I will not. Oh, also, how great would that be though? A 6-3 game where you bet both teams don't score under 10, or both teams score under 10, and you also have the safety, and Tampa Bay gets 3 safeties. That's a big winner right there.
Yeah,
everybody watch out.
There you go. Or maybe it's a 6-3 game. Tampa Bay scores a touchdown, and then there's a 1-point safety. What would happen if there's the 1-point safety, the rare but possible 1-point safety? Would that qualify?
Yeah, sure. Let's do it.
Okay, so that's how the 6-3 would happen. Chiefs get 2 safeties, one of them a 1-point safety, and then the Bucs score a touchdown.
I'm in.
All right. Well, as always, we'd like to end our show with one of us just talking about complete nonsense. So that's what we've gone down to here. Thanks to everyone for watching. We appreciate it. Kyle, let them know where they can find you.
Yeah, make sure to follow us on Twitter. That's at Jackson Kruger. I'm at by Kyle Grondin. That's BY by Kyle Grondin. By Kyle Grondin on Twitter. And also follow the account. I'll be tweeting during the Super Bowl at On the Sideline JK. At On the Sideline JK. Entertaining stuff. Make sure to follow us there, and you'll get updates on the next show.
Yes. Also, I shouldn't have just thrown out the 1-point safety. Everyone's confused now. The 1-point safety, that's if there's a safety on the point after attempt. It only counts as 1 point. And so the idea of that, you'd have to lose 98 yards for my hypothetical to work out. Probably not going to happen. But yeah, there you go. Thanks to everyone again. We appreciate it. And we'll see you. Oh, I meant to mention, we'll see you at 1 o'clock Eastern, 1 o'clock in the morning Eastern after the Super Bowl. So instead of the midnight, we're pushing back an hour just so I have time to make videos. So there you go. And yeah, so we'll see you 1 o'clock after the Super Bowl. And until then, have a good one.
Peace.